What is the point of the ANC? As the news of the last week has been centered around the budget fiasco, the future of the government of national unity, I don't think we're asking the logical question here. And that is, what is the point of the ANC? It feels a little bit like we've got the drunk guy driving the bus. The guy who doesn't know where we're going to. He's the only one who's been out all night. We all just want to get home, go places, do stuff. And this drunkard is driving the bus dangerously all over the road. And then the burning question is, why do we let them drive? It would help if we had any inkling of what the ANC wants. We know a lot about what they don't want. We heard, for example, when the whole budget fiasco was busy playing out, that they didn't want to cut expenses. Why? Because those expenses are sitting there in bloated government offices, in these 700 state-owned companies that we've got, usually managed by deployed ANC cadres. So we know that they don't want to cut that. But what do they want? Does their ambition end only with keeping all of their deployed cadres employed, flashy cars? Is it only about that little enclave of senior ANC people that are milking our tax money? Do they have any ambition at all for the country, for the citizens, for the 60 million people? Not talking about the thousands that are there in government getting fat salaries, working in nice offices, blue lights, etc. I'm talking about the majority of South Africa. I don't see it. I just don't see any idea coming out of them. Now, we all remember some of the great ANC campaign slogans, a better life for all, together we can do more. These things were quite aspirational, but quite vague. Obviously, those were the heydays where the ANC was still popular and people still believed that the ANC wanted to improve South Africa. But it all fell apart when they realized that the slogans actually meant, once you voted, that it was a better life for us. Together, nothing. We're going to do whatever we like, and to hell with you. Nothing brought this home clearer than the issue around the budget, where the ANC refuses to cut expenditure as long as they can pay for their mates and their own cushy jobs. Which is fine, we can all have fights about it, but to what end? To what end do you want to keep this big bloated machinery going? Is that the sum total of their ambition? I believe it is, and I believe it's time for us to start having this conversation. So let's talk about vision and political vision, because we've got what is still a very important political player in the ANC. They got 40% of the national vote at the general election in 2024. And we've got to talk about what they see for the future of South Africa. Because they're still going to be a role player whether we like them or not, to use Cyril Ramaphosa's favorite saying. We live our lives in hope. We want a nicer house, car, you want a good life for your children, and so on. You want to go places, you want to do stuff. And so it should be with political parties. And I'd say that right now, we've been stuck with a party that has got a president with no energy in President Cyril Ramaphosa, and a party with no vision. And this hurts the country because we just don't have a destination. There is no plan that I can see. Now, the one attempt that the ANC had at creating a master plan, they talk of themselves as extreme communists, but where's the 5-year plan? Where's the anything plan? They came out with a development plan in 2012, put together by Trevor Manuel, which had vision for what South Africa looks like 2030. And almost immediately, the president of the day then, Jacob Zuma, did nothing about it, and so did his successor, President Cyril Ramaphosa. So that plan is dead in the water, and that plan wasn't really so much as a plan as it was a storybook, a wish list about a country that we don't live in. But our country needs objectives. If you look at India, they've got an objective. We've dealt extensively with India. Their objective is to be a first world country by 2047. At least that's an objective. It's something that you can explain to people. But what is our objective? Do we just want to keep on fighting to keep BE alive? To what end? What do you want to do with it? Do you want to expropriate land? To what end? What do you want to do with the land? Do it. Do whatever you want to do. Tell us what your plan is. All we hear is that we got to put this in, this Expropriation Act, so that we can do something about land. Great. Well, what is the plan once you've got this thing in place? Nowhere was this more evident than in what the ANC did in the province of Gauteng, where they still cling on to power despite not having a majority. The Premier of Gauteng, Panyaza Lesufi, goes around making promises all day that he's never going to keep. And to what end? Why hold on to that power if you don't intend to do anything with it? It boggles my mind that you can have people who are in charge of the country that fight so fiercely. They backstab, they collude, they do whatever they can do to stay in power. To achieve what? If it was some kind of grand revolution, I would understand it. If you wanted to hold on power so that you can steal money, at least we knew what Jacob Zuma wanted to do. He wanted to steal money. At least that was a plan. We don't have a plan. We just go along day by day. It seems like the only thing that drives the ANC is to hold on to power for power's sake. There are some trappings that come with power. You get to drive in a nice car, you get to sit in a nice office, you get to be called honorable minister whether you're honorable or not. You get to lord it over the population. But surely you get into politics to make life better for the citizens. And what you want to do is you want to look at that young person in the eye and say, you know what? When you do this and that and the other, you study hard, you work hard, you abide by the law, you will be rewarded by becoming successful. What does that success mean? What do we want to do? Do we want to make stuff? Do we want to mine stuff? Do we want to sell stuff? What? I just don't see it. I don't see it for a second, right? The ANC has given up on the idea that citizens can make up their own minds or that citizens have their own skills, yet they're not empowering them to make a future for the country. There's a wonderful thing called the American dream. And for 100, 200 years, this has been peddled as the great idea. And what is the American dream? The dream is you can become rich. That is the American dream. You can start off poor and you can become rich. And you know what? Hundreds of millions of people have bought into that, and that's why their country is rich, because they've got an objective. We don't have such an objective. Even in something as broad as the dream. Why? Because our dream always has to have caveats and brackets and commas and a long statement like this. It's not the South African dream. What is the South African dream? The South African dream is you can do really well if you do a BEE deal and get a share of a business that used to be owned by a white person, then maybe he will give you a little share. Is that a dream? Sounds like a flippin' nightmare to me. So surely what you need, the first objective, is to have an objective. I mean, there's not a sports team in the world that doesn't go into the new season. You go into any new season, if you're a soccer team and you say, our objective is to not be relegated. Is that really an objective? I'll tell you what, you're going to stick around. Look where you're going to be. You're going to be in that relegation zone because that's all you're speaking about. In South Africa, all the ANC talks about is poverty. Poverty, poverty, as if that is the objective. Surely you should be talking about wealth. Now, look, I say this about the ANC, understanding that they are dying, and they can't die fast enough if you ask me. But I think that as South Africans, we've got to expect more from our political parties. We've got to expect more than them just saying, you know, if you vote for me, you know what I'll do? I'll do what you paid me to do. Come on, guys. That's what we're paying you to do, is to do what you paid you to do, right? We want people who have vision. And I'm just not seeing it. It's most visible that the ANC doesn't have vision. I'm not seeing a lot of vision out of the Democratic Alliance or out of the Patriotic Alliance or out of the EFF or out of anybody. What's wrong with this country? Why can't we have people together that actually, is there not one person that can come out with a vision? I mean, just look, the world is turning. The world is turning. We've seen visible examples of countries that have objectives, that are achieving things, turning countries around. We've seen a vision emerge in Argentina, where at least that country's been turned around. We mentioned India. China has had an objective. Those Asian tigers in Southeast Asia, they have vision. We have nothing. We only talk about the past, and the past can't be your vision. The past is your past. There's nothing you can do about it. When do you suppose one of our political parties is going to understand that if you came out and offered a vision, people would vote for it because they could see their lives improving? But the problem is that for the next 9 years, we are stuck with the ANC being a very important part of our political firmament, and there is no point to them. It's a bit like looking at ZANU in Zimbabwe. They don't have any point. They have no vision. They have no future. It seems to be an African malaise where none of these countries have a vision. You know, Rwanda has been probably the most successful country in Africa in the last decade and a half. And you know what their vision is? Let's make the place cleaner. It sounds like nothing, but it galvanizes people. You start somewhere. But right now, and if you look back for the last 15 years, you've got to say to yourself, what has been the point of the ANC? And we've got to ask that question. You could say that in various forms, some of the other parties have lived off that vision of saying, at least we'll do our job. And that sounds wonderful. You know, that's what the DA sells all the time. You know, at least we'll the water will run out of your taps, or and the sewage won't run in the streets, and we'll grab that. That's hardly vision, but it's better than what we're living through at the moment. But please remember that whatever your thoughts are about a fiasco like that, it wasn't to further an ambition. It wasn't to say we really need more money so that we can help people develop, so that they can become wealthy, so that they can become independent, good citizens. No, it was to pay off our bloated civil service. That's hardly a vision. So I think it's time that we start asking our politicians for what their vision is. What does their party want? And it can't be a slogan yay long that they will never live by. So that is why South Africa drifts along and gets nowhere and just falls down the global rankings, because we have absolutely no answers to what we want South Africa to look like in 10, 15, 20, or 50 years' time. And it's time we get that. One company that does have a vision, and that's Pace Car Rental. They want to get you from A to B in the cheapest possible way. Use our code SONA when you go and rent a car from them on their website. Subscribe to the State of the Nation channel. That's showing a bit of vision. And we will see you again on the State of the Nation. Thank you for joining me.
Taps.